Okay, we'll move on to our class then. And we're talking about the opening of the seventh seal, which is kind of interesting because we've gone through the first six, and the seals represent the opening of the various chakras. And the seventh chakra is what?
Hey, JJ,
Yeah.
I have a question before you get going into the seventh seal. So the sixth seal is we've been talking about the last 3 or 4 weeks, the opening of the third eye, and I have some questions about that. Can we cover those before we get into the seventh?
Sure.
Is Christ, when he walked the earth, a good example of someone who had his third eye open?
Yeah, one of the great examples of it was where he met this woman at the well, and he started up a conversation with her, and he corrected her. She said was talking about her husband, and he pointed out she had several different husbands in her past, and he told her about her past, and she was so impressed. She said, well, you must be a prophet. Because so he was able to read her mind because he had his third eye completely open, so he could see into the thoughts of other people. Now remember, the third eye has two major petals, and each petal has 48 smaller petals within it, making 96 altogether. So he probably had all 96 of them activated. So he was able to be very accurate in looking beyond the physical. And so he exemplified this several times. I think he also commented about what Nathan was thinking about when he was under the fig tree. And he impressed Nathan because he thought, how do you know that I was under the fig tree contemplating this certain thing? And so he there's a lot of examples in the life of Christ about him having his third eye completely open. Now, as the third eye opens, we don't all have these abilities because all of the petals of our third eye may not be activated. But when it begins to open, what the person sees is through the eyes of understanding. So he begins to understand things that he never understood before. He sees a light. There's the physical light that we're all familiar with, and then there's the light of understanding, the light that reveals truth from error. And this is one of the qualities that the person with the third eye open has, is he's able to discern truth from error much more accurately than someone whose third eye is not open at all. And if the third eye is not open at all, you got to go pretty much by what the authorities tell you is true, which isn't very accurate.
Right. And so some additional questions on that. We have a belief system, and I don't know how intertwined it is with the mental body. We have the mental body, the emotional body. We have a belief system where our beliefs are contained. Do you think that Christ could see accurately and read, scan and read the emotional body, the mental body, the belief system, and maybe past and maybe past lives of the individual? Is that where the understanding comes from?
Yeah, the third eye allows you, if it's completely open, allows you to penetrate into any area you want to penetrate. And it also allowed him to confound anyone that approached him. Like the Jewish leaders came to him and they thought they would trip him up And his answers were so confounding, it says, they dared not ask him any more questions.
I've heard too that when it's open, when the eye is open, you can see into the hearts and minds of others.
Yeah, right. And you can also recognize other people that are in touch with the spirit. You can pick up their vibration. This helps a lot when you encounter these various gurus out there that say, hey, I have this angel or master visit me, and so you need to listen to me because I got the real truth here. So these type of people, if your third eye is open, you can discern if they're the real thing or not. And so this is that's an important thing. And also it's important to discern your limitations, because if you have a limitation in a certain area and you don't think you have a limitation, then you will not work on removing that limitation. That limitation will stay with you until you wake up and examine yourself truly. And so one of the big problems with disciples is they think they're farther ahead than they are, and so they're not working on removing their limitations because they don't think they have any. And a lot of people in the New Age movement, as well as the Christian religion and Islam and all the other spiritual movements, they all have their teaching about what achieves liberation. For the fundamentalist Christian, they just acknowledge Jesus is Lord and they're saved and that's it. For the New Ager, it may be there may be steps involved, or maybe their master guru has just taken them to the fifth dimension or something like that. So they all have these steps, and the person that when the third eye is open, he begins to see where his limitations are. Whereas these spiritual followers, their leaders will often tell them, just follow me and all your limitations will be removed. You don't have to worry about anything. Just believe in Jesus and you're saved, and acknowledge Jesus as Lord and that's it. Or acknowledge so-and-so as your guru and that will be it. And then you don't have to worry about anything. But having the revelation of your own limitations is extremely important, and then accepting that. So we accept where we are, so then we can take the next step. If you are on the third step of a ladder and you think you are on the eighth step, then you cannot take the fourth step. Okay, the fourth step is the next step is what you need to take, not way up there. And it's interesting how many.
JJ,
Yeah.
When we accept that there is a path and it goes beyond, and it has levels, we accept that, don't we? Like Christ has limitations too that he's working on.
Yeah.
And the solo logos has limitations, and it's all on a graduated scale. So you're saying that with our third eye closed, we tend to not look at our own limitations, or we misplace ourselves on the path. Third eye open, we can accurately.
Right. We until the third eye begins to open, we go by pretty much trial and error. Okay. We suffer a lot of pain, and that pain teaches us this is not the way to go. Okay. And pain and pleasure guide us until the third eye is open. When the third eye is open, then you do not have to undergo a lot of pain to get the truth. Until it is open, we're so thick-headed. We have to be hit on the head and suffer a lot before we think am I doing something wrong? Is what do I need to do to eliminate this pain? And now there's different types of pain, not only physical, but emotional and mental. And there's pain on a number of different levels and distress. And there's fear and guilt and all these things. And so we have to, the trouble is uh, until the third eye is significantly open, we go by pretty much trial and error, and the progress is slow. Once the third eye is open significantly, then the progress is accelerated because you can be accurate without having it drilled into you through having a lot of pain and distress. So Jesus was a great example of that. He until his crucifixion arrived, he didn't have any pain outside of maybe was a little impatient with some of the people he taught because they were kind of thick. But he didn't have nothing interfered with his peace, and he was able to progress very quickly because he could discern truth from error.
I think it would also, I mean, it sounds to me, and this is the most I've ever understood about the third eye. I've never understood these things before. Maybe I've never had it explained to me this way, but it seems that it would allow you to love people more genuinely and deeply because you would understand them and their path, and the personality friction points that normally would affect you would disappear because you could see them, you could see deeply into them, their mental body, their emotional body, their travels. That really appeals to me. It seems like it would give you a greater capacity to love.
Well, one of my favorite quotes is this: before something can be loved, it must first be understood. I've heard that attributed to Leonardo da Vinci, but I couldn't find who said it for sure. But whoever said it, it's a great statement, because we can have selfish love where we want something to satisfy our lower desires, and people call that love. But the higher type of love functions or manifests through understanding. And you're right. So if your understanding is enhanced with the third eye being open, then your ability to love would also be increased. Okay. Anything else on that?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, JJ, can I just ask a question there? Where comes the place of belief? You know, the Christ often speaks about belief. You know, when he resurrected, he came to Thomas and he said to him, "Put your hands on my hands." And he said, "Okay, do you now believe because you see?" And he said, "Blessed are the day that see not yet, that believe."
Yeah. So in a way, it's if you're skeptical if you're skeptical like Thomas was, then at least he admitted it. Yeah, I'm skeptical on this. I want some evidence. And the Gospel of Thomas is interesting. It presents Thomas as actually one of the more advanced disciples. So maybe that's because he wrote the Gospel of Thomas. But if a person has doubts, then he needs to follow that, and then if he follows it, then he can remove those doubts. And so the doubt isn't necessarily bad, because it's an opportunity to make an extra step. If you have doubts about something, then we need to examine that and then remove the doubt and move beyond it. But if we say we have doubts, and the inclination is sometimes to think, well, I'm a very spiritual person and I should be above this, so I am above it. And so they don't examine where they really are. So we must always examine, be honest about where we really are, so we can
Well, JJ,
take our next step.
the religious authorities use that as a way to get people to blindly believe. There's a space for healthy skepticism, and the religious authorities get around that by bringing up doubting Thomas and making it look like it's a bad thing. And
Right.
Just be
That's
blindly believing everything they say.
That's an excellent point. And, I'm a member of a number of different groups, like, say, the Course in Miracles group. If you express any doubt about Course in Miracles being 100% true, I mean, you can just sense people are frowning on you. You don't doubt it. Okay. And the same thing with, you go on a Christian site, like I'm a member of several ex-Mormon groups too, and they're the same way. You express a doubt of anything that's in the Mormon scriptures, as if you say something like, well, have you considered that this scripture just may not actually be true? That about blows them away. Because no, we don't consider that it may not be literally true at all. We don't go along with that. So you need to examine everything, because whether it be the scriptures, whether it be a great revelation like the Course in Miracles has really great stuff in, or even the Tibetan, the Alice A. Bailey books. If you see something in there as great as the words are that doesn't register with your soul, go ahead and doubt it, and figure out what's the problem with it. Is it my problem, or was there something actually wrong with the way it was written? And so, but if the typical spiritual follower likes to glom on to something that's black and white, so he can feel, okay, now if I doubt something, I can just go to what is written here, and if I can find the right verse, everything in this book, in this Bible, or this book, or this revelation is 100% true, I can figure out what's true and what's false. Well, not necessarily. The only way to be sure of what's true and what's false is to take everything that registers or that's under consideration and run it by your soul. And when your soul gives you confirmation, then that is a lot more reliable than finding some verse out there that says what you want it to say or means what you want it to mean. For one problem with, say, the Bible, for one thing, you can take one verse out of the Bible and present it to 5 different people of 5 different religious beliefs, and they will all interpret it differently. So just trying to go by black and white words does not lead you to the truth.
Like the phrase, man must be born again. Born again, what does that mean to the average person?
Yeah, there's all kinds of different interpretations about what that means.
Yeah, so that's just an example. Or you can use the Bible against itself. You know, one verse may say one thing and another verse out of context may contradict it. You know, so you really do have to have an intuitional flash.
Yeah, the
And
Course in Miracles makes an interesting statement that words are symbols of symbols. And so because they're symbols of symbols, in other words, there are several levels away from true communication. So true communication has to come through your own soul. And the words that's out there in the teachings kind of gives us hints, direction. So we run them by our souls, and our soul gives us enlightenment as to what the truth is behind the meaning. And also the great teachers, what the words they have given out are given out in such a way that they can be interpreted on several levels. Remember, the Jews believed that each scripture had at least 3 valid interpretations that were true. And so the people that are black and white, they just want one interpretation. And the interesting part about this is that the reason they want the one interpretation is because they don't have to think about it. Because if you say to be born again just means proclaim Jesus as Lord, and then he makes you born again, that's really easy. Okay, it's really easy. It's cut and dried. Okay, that's what I do, and now I've done that. Great, it's taken care of. And see, it's black and white. That's what they want. They want 1 + 1 = 2 formula that they can follow because they don't have to think about it. 1 + 1 = 2. They got that memorized, and no thought is necessary. And the motive that's behind this for the average person is they're lazy. And they're lazy. They don't want to think.
I like the statement, when the leaders speak, the thinking has been done.
Right. That's what one of the church authorities said in the Mormon church. It kind of got to me and Curtis. We often
when I explore a new thing, I look at the spirit in it, but then also I want to know the science. I look at something and I want to know, how does this work? Just in case I want to be a creator myself and build one just like it.
Yeah. And the average person, like he gets we get a new computer or a new iPhone or whatever. We don't think about how it works. We just want it to work.
We don't want to read the instruction manual that much.
Yeah.
Well, when I see anything or I hear anything, and something's I want to figure out, it's like peeling the onion. You know, I look between the layers. What's behind this and what's behind that, and what's the operating principle behind all the appearance? It's like an onion. You peel away the layers.
Yeah, and the natural instinct is, like I say, we just have laziness, and people don't want to peel that onion away. They just want to be said, now what's true? Is it A, B, or C is true? Just let me know what the truth is, and I don't want to have to investigate and figure it out or even understand it. I just want the answer. Okay, well, okay, Jesus is Lord. Believe in Jesus and you're saved, and that's all you got to do. Okay, and or accept this guru, and if you're accepting, flying saucers are going to appear in 6 months from now and take us to the 5th dimension. Okay.
I don't care if it rains or freezes, as long as I got my plastic Jesus on the dashboard of my car.
When I was a little kid, my favorite thing was when a toy broke. Then I got to see inside and how they made it do what it did.
Yeah, some of the greatest geniuses, when they were little kids, when they were given a present, they just take it apart and put it back together and do stuff like that. Whereas the average kid just wants to play with the little thing, whatever it is. So that's an interesting side note. Okay, any other comments or questions on this subject?
Well, just one on the Course in Miracles about love says to love is to be happy with. And that's really true. If you're not happy with a person, it's really hard to love them. So you have to rise above all personality restrictions so you can really be happy. I have to be happy with everybody here at some level so I can love them. Now, Adam's pretty easy. You know, he's pretty easy going. Don't see much resistance there. So I'm happy with Adam. Not happy without him.
Yeah, the Course makes another interesting statement. It says your purpose is to be happy.
Right. So you put them together. If you're happy, then you can love, period. Just you're in a state of love.
Yeah, and how many people think our purpose is to be unhappy and sacrifice everything and be miserable? So we undergo all kinds of pain so that we can have deliverance. And that's kind of the mindset of not only the Christians, but all the religions of the planet kind of have that mindset that we got to sacrifice through all kinds of pain, and happiness will only come when we die and go to heaven or something like that.
Well, that's our reward for suffering on this planet. That's why I have to sacrifice everything, do without, be miserable, unhappy, because my reward is way out there somewhere when I die.
Yeah, but when a person gets rid of his guilt, recognizes his true self, and has soul contact, and the soul does not condemn. The outer gods, or the people that's taken the place of God out there, will make us do everything they can to make us feel guilty, make us feel that we have to sacrifice to them. And whereas when the soul contact is made, there's no condemnation, there's only peace. The soul is not interested in condemning us. It's only interested in our happiness, really. And when the third eye is open and people see correctly, then they can see beyond the miseries connected with this world to what brings true happiness. And true happiness comes from true freedom. And how many people just do not feel free? They do not feel free to speak up. They do not feel free to explore thought in a certain direction because that's condemned by different people and different outer gods and different idols. But if you have a sense of freedom, that you're free to look anywhere, you're free to ask questions about anything. You're even free to ask whether or not there's a God. Go ahead and ask that question.
Well, how many people say
God is not going to be offended.
Our freedoms are all being taken away? I say, well, name one. And they can't. Other than prices of gas, there are some things that are happening around us that are restricting us, but we live in the freest country in the world. We can say whatever we want, go wherever we want, do pretty much whatever we want.
Yeah, except on Facebook and Twitter, you got to be pretty careful.
How many groups have you been kicked out of, Joe?
I've been kicked out of probably about 10 different ones.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and boy, I'm just really easy going too. It's amazing that it's so easy to offend people.
Well,
Just
on the idea of sacrifice, the greatest joy is when you sacrifice your personal interests for the service of and the good of someone else. That's the greatest happiness. And if you try it, you'll like it.
Yeah.
Hey, JJ.
Yeah.
To go along with what you guys are talking about, happiness, that fits in good with what Ed just said. Somewhere I came across the definition of happiness as being we're happy when we're progressing on the path. To any degree, when we progress, it brings happiness, and to any degree that we decline, it brings unhappiness.
Well, that's a really good point. Yeah, go ahead.
So whatever and so we're all on a little bit different place on the path, and we all have different things to encounter on our path, you know, in each lifetime. But when we progress even a degree, we experience happiness. I think that mixes in with everything that you guys have been saying about happiness.
Like when you get an aha, you have an aha moment. You're reading something in Blue Books, and it elucidates a thought or gives you some enlightenment, and you go, aha, you know, I never thought of that. That produces a state of inner happiness, discovery.
Yeah, that's a good point, you guys, because have you ever noticed that the times of the greatest stress in your life is when you come to a fork in the road and you're not sure whether to pick A or B. You're at that point where you're indecisive, and that's a terrible point to be in. And then when you finally have to make a decision, okay, so you decide on A. If A is right and gets approval of your soul, it will just feel right. You'll just have a feeling that, oh man, I chose the right thing, that I'm gonna forge ahead. If you choose B and B was the worst choice, you'll feel uneasy about it. And usually the worst choice is the easy choice. Okay.
Isn't that true?
So you pick that easy and worst choice, you're going to feel uncomfortable, and then you have to backtrack and then make the correct choice. And sometimes, but we're pretty stubborn, because when we make a choice that's the wrong choice, we don't want to admit to ourselves it's wrong, number one. And we don't like the idea of the time we wasted with that wrong choice. We want to feel that, well, I got all this time invested. It's like putting money into a project. You don't want to feel like it was all down the drain. But you got to look at it this way. It's not all down the drain, because you learn something.
You learn something from it.
So you won't make that mistake again. It's like Edison was approached by a reporter saying, I've heard you've had 10,000 experiments with this silly light bulb you're trying to make, and you haven't been able to produce it yet. Are you willing to admit now that this is a pipe dream, that this is impossible? And Edison says, no. He says, these are not failure at all. He says, I have found 10,000 things that do not work. And so I've only got a handful left. And then I'm going to have success.
And then he discovered tungsten.
Yeah. But so this is the way we have to look at it. If you make a wrong decision and you're going down a path that wastes time, instead of thinking, well, I've got such an investment in this, I must continue. Instead of thinking that way, you think, well, I've got it revealed to me now that this is a wrong path. I'm not going to take it again. This is valuable information. It's not energy down the drain. I have learned something from this. I've learned what not to do.
Tungsten was down the road.
What's that?
Tungsten didn't come in light bulbs till much later. Edison started with his first success was with carbon.
Oh, was it? Okay. Yeah.
Well, that's why there's reincarnation. So you can, after each lifetime, you can analyze. You go through kind of a personal judgment where you analyze your past, and then, you can correct it. Where if you just keep on in one lifetime, you may not correct a problem. You may not see it clearly.
Yeah, and if you have a lifetime where you really screw up, then when you're born again, you don't have any memory of it. Which
That's a good thing.
It's a good thing, because if you had a memory of, you think, boy, my past life, I really screwed up. How am I going to redeem myself? So you'd have all your focus on that. Instead, we're born with a blank slate. So every one of us just starts completely fresh, which is a good thing. And we need to do this in life. When we make mistakes, and we have this tendency in our life, when we make mistakes, we're tend to reflect on our past and let our past govern our present. Instead of letting our past govern our present, let our present govern our present. In other words, what you think will bring you happiness now, go ahead and go for it. Instead of thinking, well, I can't really have happiness until I redeem myself from my past mistakes. Okay. So the eternal now, we're told, is where the true joy is to be found. And we can't really escape the past completely. We have to look at it and use it to manage our lives. I mean, we couldn't even speak without knowledge of past, the language that we've learned in the past. So, but the disciple needs to put his consciousness in the now. And by putting his consciousness in the now, he can focus on where the true satisfaction and joy can be found and make the greatest, fastest progress.
There are two scriptures that'll validate what you just said, and one is in the Old Testament. It says, you could put it in the beginning, each day I create a new heaven and a new earth, and the old shall not be remembered, neither shall it come to mind. So, you know, that's about letting go of the past. And then what did Jesus say? Take no thought of tomorrow, for tomorrow will take care of itself. So when you put those two scriptures together, all that's left is the here and now.
Yeah. And take no thought of tomorrow. That's kind of a difficult one to take literally, because in this world, we have to take some thought, but we must not let it consume us. You know, take enough thought that you can take care of yourself, make yourself have enough food to eat and roof over your head, different things like that.
I think that wisdom is the glue that we need to bring all these thoughts together into one idea.
Yeah, and what's that one idea?
Well, the one idea is the idea of life. And I'm saying we're hearing different thoughts here, but it has, each one of these things has to be brought into that focus of wisdom and pure reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be here now.
The correspondence to that, it would be that where we are, Christ once was, and if he was allowing the mistakes or failures or blunders of his past to dictate his future, we'd all be in trouble. He's once again showing us how to do it, focusing on the now.
Yeah, and even though we want to put the authority of the soul above the outward authorities, there are outward people like the Christ and the Buddha and Gandhi and different teachers that set an example for us. And these teachers can be used in a very positive way. It can show us what we can accomplish. But even these great teachers just don't come before us and say, okay, I'm going to show you how to become liberated. You need to do ABC. They point the way and then allow us to find the way through our inner contact. But just seeing that there's a being like the Christ that we can become, that gives us more motivation and inspiration than reading all the holy books on the earth, just knowing that somebody else has done it. It's like the 4-minute mile. People believed that it was, for many years, that it was impossible for anyone to run a mile in 4 minutes. And then finally somebody did it. And after the first guy broke the 4-minute mile, all of a sudden, a whole bunch of people started breaking it. It's because when somebody saw that, hey, it is possible, somebody did break the 4-minute mile, maybe I can. And now there's hundreds of people that have broken the 4-minute mile.
It's Roger Bannister.
Yeah, right. And before that, before Roger did that, for thousands of years, people thought it was impossible. And then all of a sudden, somebody does it, and they say, well, wait, it is possible. And so this was the great message that Jesus gave us, was what is possible. It's possible to have that third eye open to read the hearts of other human beings the way he did. It's possible to perform miracles. It's possible to even overcome death. These things are possible. And the fact that he presented possibilities to us is probably more important than all the teachings that could be presented anywhere. But knowing that it is possible. And just like, and sports is this way, and you see records being broken and you think, this is now possible. It's possible for this event, this record to occur. Maybe I can do it too.
If you look at that's a good point. If you look at the Olympics back in the 50s, compared to the Olympics that are happening today, back then it was a big deal if they could do a backflip.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, they fly through the air with the greatest of ease. You know, it's like, man, how did they even balance and do triple flips on a small beam of wood?
Yeah, I don't even want to think about what I would have to do something like that.
You have to spend your whole life getting ready for that one moment.
Yeah.
Hey, JJ.
Yeah.
JJ. Hey, you brought up Roger Bannister, and this is in my notes from a while back, maybe 9 or 10 months ago, but the thought I had on that day, I equated you to Roger Bannister because the problem for the planet is lack of soul contact, and I know that there's evidences of a lot of people in a lot of different areas throughout history that have touched on soul contact and had some success, but the first step in overcoming any problem is to clearly define it and understand it, like we talked about earlier. And you are the first person in history to do that. You've written a book on it, and you teach how to soul contact. And we can't advance as humanity any farther than we have without soul contact, spiritually speaking. And I equated you in my notes to Roger Bannister, because well, I did, and I'm not the specific point is that within a year after Roger Bannister broke that barrier, 67 people around the world then broke the 4-minute mile barrier.
Oh, I didn't realize it happened that fast.
Yeah, they hadn't even met him. All they had to do was hear that it was possible. And you've done the same thing with soul contact. You've defined it. You've shown us how to do it, and told us that it's possible. And you're in my mind, you're the Roger Bannister of spirituality in our time.
Well, I'm flattered, but there's been a lot of teachers with soul contact, but they just express it in different words, and they've set great examples for us. And so, but
none of hey, I'm somewhat familiar with those, and none of them have done it like you, JJ. You're being a little.
Yeah, well, each teacher does it just a little bit differently. So I'm glad that what I've done has been helpful. And
I so agree with Scott. That was excellent. I do agree. Thank you, JJ.
well, thank you. Well, we certainly appreciate everybody here, and everybody here is an example to somebody. So think of people that may be having their eye on you. Some people will have their eye on you that you may not be aware of. I think back to when I was living in the, when I was a college student living in the fire station. And we used to, us college kids used to drive the fire trucks out and help the volunteers fight the fires. And we had a kitchen there where we all made our own meals and stuff. And there was this one guy, I thought he was kind of acting weird because he was doing things that was slightly annoying, I thought, but I thought, wonder what his problem is. And so I just ignored it. And after about 2 weeks passed, he came up to me and he says, something I've noticed about you is you never seem to get agitated about anything. So these past 2 weeks, I've been trying to do everything I can to irritate you. And you're not irritated. He says, what? He says, never encountered anybody like you before. So in other words, this guy had his eye on me and I didn't think anyone was paying attention to me at all. But people will look, just think of your life. There's people that have their eye on you, and your example will show them what can be done that maybe they are not accomplishing in their life. So maybe this guy got agitated a lot easier than he should have been, and maybe he was looking at me and he thought, well, that's a pretty good example to follow. Maybe I should be a little bit more patient too. So so think of that. Think of during this next week, pay particular attention to people that may be looking at you as somebody that can show them possibilities that are not manifesting in their own life. Okay, any comments or questions before we sign off? We never got very far in the seventh seal, but we'll tackle that next week, all being well.
Have a great 4th of July.
Oh yeah, 4th of July tomorrow for people in the United States. And if you're not in the United States, set up a few fireworks anyway.
Shoot something off.
Or go to New Plymouth.
Yeah. Or watch on the internet, there'll be fireworks displays there somewhere if you want to watch them.
Have a great
Gonna say the
celebration.
barbecue.
Okay, appreciate everybody being here.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good class, Joe. Good class.
And I'm glad some
Thank you,
I'm
JJ.
glad some females showed up this week. Keep us guys in line. We get kind of out of control when you females aren't around.
Bye.